Harding, Then and Now. When Harding Junior High opened its doors in August of 1965, there were 800 students in grades 7, 8, and 9, 61 teachers, and only a few buses. Its award-winning design caused some to call it the School of the Future. Others thought a UFO had landed in Knoll Ridge Park. Mr. Irwin Nelson was the principal. He was also known as the voice of Kingston Stadium, where he announced games for 31 years. His warm smile and familiar flat top were his trademarks as he accepted the challenge of opening a brand new school with a brand new staff. Athletic teams were available only to boys. Girls were expected to take home economics, and the boys worked with power tools in industrial arts. The conflict in Vietnam seemed worlds apart from Harding, where student council argued for cheerleaders, and social studies classes created their own version of Hollywood Squares. With a setting in Knoll Ridge Park, our school had its own creek with white sand beaches, at least until the first flood. Harding joined the world in mourning the death of Martin Luther King, who was martyred for his stand on civil rights. Because of his assassination, Harding observes Black History Month. Astronaut Neil Armstrong became the first person to set foot on the moon on July 20th of 1969 with these words, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind."
In the late 60s, Harding students boarded the train for what was probably their first and only train ride to Chicago, St. Louis, or Denver. They toured Lake Michigan, fell asleep at the planetarium, and learned how to use the proper silverware at the Candlelight Dinner Theater. We were proud of their polite manners and best-dressed behavior. Environmentalists had not yet spoken, so students were free to stuff the zoo animals with marshmallow treats. The dinosaur bones and Egyptian mummies were favorites, and no one could forget our early morning bus trip past Skid Row to the subway station. That's the way it was in the 60s. Earth Day ushered in the 70s with Harding's outdoor education. Students spent an overnight at Camp Wapsie, learning to make tea in a tree or to roast a pig on a spit. Chargers dug up artifacts and built shelters typical of an early culture. Others learned to cook over an open fire. And they had fun, too. Duane Carnes took over the helm at Harding about the time college campuses were protesting the conflict in Vietnam. But ninth graders were celebrating the end of their junior high years with a special dance. Dr. Carnes proposed a new addition with vast open spaces for team teaching. Harding walls came tumbling down, later to be replaced by folding walls. School did not end in June. Summer school was not something to be dreaded, but an opportunity. There were early morning bird hikes, canoeing the upper Iowa, and seining our own Knoll Ridge Pond. Notice how much smaller the trees were? Do you recognize this three-leafed specimen these students identified? They were scratching for days afterward. Sports were strictly for boys in the 60s. Did Mr. Strilich get carried away in testing the strength of one of his wrestlers? Mr. Keano and an early Harding track team. Notice their dapper satin shorts. Gymnastics was taught during gym class. Along with equal rights came girls' athletics. Track was the first girls' sport. And basketball followed. What 70s staff member can forget working bingo games to provide the universal gym to Harding? Or the annual staff-student ball games? Students took pride in wearing the green and white, and especially prized were those photos labeled City Champions.
At the same time came equal rights in the classroom. We moved from all boys in the world of construction and all girls in sewing and cooking to mixed classrooms in home economics and industrial arts, where dream houses were designed and built by young men and women. During this time of change in the 70s, soldiers were coming home at last from Vietnam, and President Nixon became the first president to resign from office. That was then.
Alan Whitworth served as Harding's principal for nearly a decade. His interest in fine arts encouraged Harding's fine arts program to blossom. In 1965, 7th grade girls performed in look-alike dresses. 9th grade talent was featured in musicals, stage plays, and talent shows. Later, Don Keano added Harding Keys, a swing choir group, complete with backup band and choreography. There were countless performances that would equal those of many high schools, and the numbers grew. And Mr. Chambers inspired many unique art projects in his 25 years at Harding.
All of these extra efforts in the Fine Arts program received special recognition in February of 1982 with a Rockefeller grant. Our school received a check for $10,000 to use for the enhancement of music, visual arts, and drama. In 1989, our school received yet another honor when it was selected as a First in the Nation in Education winner. We received our plaque during ceremonies in Des Moines in May of 1989, and then Harding was honored in an all-school assembly in February of 1990, which was attended by Governor Terry Branstad. Many areas in our building have changed over the 25 years. The IMC used to be rather bleak without its carpet, new furniture, and plants. The direction of your lockers in the locker link was changed in order to improve supervision. People walking into the building used to be greeted with the quote, "You shall know the truth." Now that has become part of the student council store. Even school lunch has gone through a metamorphosis. We no longer have this ice cream machine, but now we have the salad bar. The early principals used to have the headache of hand scheduling, but now teams do it with the assistance of a computer. 2 classrooms have been changed into computer labs to meet the technology needs of the future. Mr. Colin Williams helped to usher in a new era in Harding's history. In August of 1987, our school became Harding Middle School for grades 6, 7, and 8, and many other changes came along with the name change. Team facilitators have become more involved in decision-making. Community service projects have become more prevalent. Volunteers help with many tasks, and students look forward to field trips. We have had more guests in our building as speakers, more projects on display from interdisciplinary units, new participants in intramurals, and games for personal development.
Yet some things never change. School pictures, math stores, dissecting frogs in science class, traffic in the spacious hallways, locker mates, rockets launched in the park, establishing friendships at lunchtime. And through it all have been the charter members of the faculty, Mr. Strilich in Industrial Arts, Mr. Chambers in visual arts, Mr. Chiano in music, Mrs. Onstott, and Mrs. Berry in the main office. And Harding traditions live on. They include high academic standards and recognition for excellence, large numbers in the fine arts program, and a caring atmosphere. For every season there is a time to renew friendships, a time to serve others, and a time to have fun, a time for team effort, a time to experiment, and a time to compete, a time to share the truth. We stand at a crossroads, ready to face the future, and after 25 years, Harding remains a school of the future. We have new faces and new leadership. The 90s have brought us full circle. In 1965, Americans were marching for civil rights. In 1990, Cedar Rapids proudly appointed the first Black American woman principal, Mrs. Sandra Ledford. That was then. This is now.